This really isn't the time.
Okay, I don't know jack about the 24th century, but everybody out there thinks that staying here and fighting the Borg is suicide. They're just afraid to come in here and say it.
The crew is accustomed to following my orders.
They're probably accustomed to your orders making sense.
None of them understand the Borg as I do. No one does. No one can.
What is that supposed to mean?
Six years ago, they assimilated me into their collective. I had their cybernetic devices implanted throughout my body. I was linked to the hive mind. Every trace of individuality erased. I was one of them. So you can imagine, my dear, I have a somewhat unique perspective on the Borg, and I know how to fight them. Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do.
I am such an idiot. It's so simple. The Borg hurt you, and now you're going to hurt them back.
In my century, we don't succumb to revenge. We have a more evolved sensibility.
I saw the look on your face when you shot those Borg on the holodeck. You were almost enjoying it.
How dare you?
Oh, come on, Captain. You're not the first man to get a thrill from murdering someone. I see it all the time.
Get out!
Or what? You'll kill me? Like you killed Ensign Lynch?
There was no way to save him.
You didn't even try. Where was your evolved sensibility then?
I don't have time for this.
Oh, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt your little quest. Captain Ahab has to go hunt his whale.
What?
You do have books in the 24th century.
This is not about revenge.
Liar!
This is about saving the future of humanity!
Jean-Luc, blow up the ship!
No! No! I will not sacrifice the Enterprise. We've made too many compromises already. Too many retreats. They invade our space, and we fall back. They assimilate entire worlds, and we fall back. Not again. The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther. I will make them pay for what they've done.
You broke your little ships. See you around, Ahab.
And he piled upon the whale's white helm the sum of all the rage and hate felt by his whole race. If his chest had been a cannon, he would have shot his heart upon it.
What?
Moby Dick?
Actually, I never read it.
Ahab spent years hunting the white whale that crippled him. Quest for vengeance. But in the end, it destroyed him and his ship.
I guess he didn't know when to quit.
Well, good morning, everyone. I guess I'm over here. We got two cameras. We've got one here. We got one here. I didn't know where I was looking for sure. It's good to see all of you today, or have all of you here with us today. It's no accident that you're here. You're a part of the First Lutheran family, and we are glad that you have come to be with us and to worship with us today. And I have to tell you, this whole coronavirus thing has been. Now I'm over here. I see that. We have a monitor over here. We have a camera up here and up here. So if I keep looking over here, it's because I'm trying to see. Okay, now we're here. So this whole coronavirus thing, back to where I was, I don't even know where I was for sure, has really sort of changed and disrupted lives, and in some pretty good ways. And one of the things that's happening is that I'm staying home more on Fridays on my day off, which means that I'm getting more of the punch list done for my wife. And one of the things that she's asked me to do is to see to it that we get the birdhouses in the backyard replaced. We've had birdhouses in the backyard they've been there at least 20 years, because that's as long as we've been there, and they're getting pretty scraggly. So on Friday, this last Friday, I decided I was going to build the birdhouses and get them put back up. Shelley, would you put up that first picture, please? Thank you. Thank you so much. So there it is. There's the birdhouse. And by the way, so I was going to build the birdhouses. We've got 3 of them back there. On Friday, I didn't build 3. I built birdhouse 1. It took all day. And you'll notice the picture is from our deck, because if you got any closer than that, you would very soon realize that while I worked for a carpenter, he didn't pass along any of the trade secrets. And this birdhouse is best seen from a distance. So that's what I've been doing on my day off. I've been building things, trying to do things that I'm just not accustomed to doing, and it's been good. And so today, the movie that you just saw, this is a movie called Star Trek: First Contact. It's from 1996, and doesn't that make you just want to be a Star Trek fan? I've been into Star Trek since the 1960s when the series came out, and I want to tell you that in terms of this congregation, I have shown great restraint. Because in 2.5 years, this is the second time that I have inflicted you with my geekdom. But you know, the thing about Star Trek is the thing that hooks me. It's not the action and the adventure and the way they blow things up from time to time. That's kind of fun, but that's not why I watch it. And it's not all the cool gadgets and toys that are going to be built 300 years from now. And it's not the fact that Michael Dorn has to spend 7 hours in a makeup chair to be transformed into the Klingon named Worf. That's not why I watch the show. I watch the show and then later movies like this because of the story that they tell. And very often those stories are about what it is to be a human. And this scene is a perfect example of just that. So Picard, he's the captain of the Enterprise. The woman who he's talking to is a woman by the name of Lily. She's in just this movie. And Picard and the Enterprise are locked in a struggle with a race called the Borg. The Borg are these aliens who consume things and people. They consume technology, they consume knowledge, and they consume people. They, by force, assimilate entire cultures and entire races of people into their way of life and into their culture. Assimilation is a process that goes like this. You have to understand this to know exactly what's going on in this clip. First, they inject these mini little microscopic devices into your body. And then those devices attach themselves and they start to transform you. And then they surgically implant on the outside sensors and other gadgets so that by the time they're all done, everything that made you is gone. It's been completely erased. And now you are no longer an individual with a personality. You are a drone, a cog in the collective for the Borg. And so now in this story, the Borg have come to do to humanity what they've done to so many other societies in the past. And this is where it gets interesting. Because you see, Captain Picard has a past with the Borg. A while back, 6 years earlier, they had assimilated him. And they not only assimilated him, but they used him to destroy millions of people. They violated him. They took away everything that he was so that he would work for them. And then once they did that, once they erased who he was, that was it. He was forcibly taken, and that violation has stayed with him all these years. It never left. Even though 6 years ago he escaped them, it's still there. Some of those devices are still in his body. They can't be removed. And so now he's not just doing battle with the Borg. It's not just a battle. It's personal. As Lily said, it's so simple. The Borg hurt you. Now you want to go and hurt them. And then comes what I think is one of the best lines of the movie. It's kind of comic relief, but it really has a deep purpose to it. Picard quotes Moby Dick, and she says, actually, I've never read it. See, Lily's not a great scholar. She's not a person with a title or a fantastic reputation or any of those kinds of things. She's just streetwise. She just knows life. Not so with Picard. He's captain of the Enterprise. He's well-read. He's refined. He knows all of the classic literature, and he has studied their lessons, and he can recite those lessons. But the injury, the violation, has become so personal that it has so consumed him that now all he can do is plan revenge. Oh, he knows intellectually the lesson. But his heart is soaked in the cheap wine of payback. And it takes someone like Lily, someone who just knows life, to pull him out. Let's sing. So we are in the last week of our After Easter sermon series. It's called Unscrambling the Resurrection Life. And it's been a great series, actually. Most of the time we spent our time in the Gospel of John, the last couple of chapters. And actually what we're going to do today is we're going to go back and revisit a lesson that we looked at early on. And the reason we're going to do that is because that lesson is just so packed with stuff. There's got to be a half a dozen sermons in there, and we hit on the topic of belief and unbelief, doubt and faith. We hit on that one earlier, but now there's something important to be said about forgiveness and unforgiveness. And so just to reset the story a little bit, it's the evening of Easter. Jesus was risen from the dead that morning, and the disciples are in a room together. 10 of the 12 are in this room together. They're locked away because they're afraid that what happened to Jesus might just happen to them. And the only two that aren't there is Judas, who has betrayed Jesus and has now killed himself, and Thomas. And there's no explanation for why he isn't there. He just isn't. And so Jesus comes into the room. The room's locked. He comes in, and he's with them. And it says he breathes on them. And then he says, receive the Holy Spirit. This is the important part. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven. And if you retain the sins of any, or if you don't forgive the sins of any, they are not forgiven. Now, I want to stop there for just a minute, because this is one of those passages, like so many passages in the Bible, that we have time and time again misunderstood, especially as it applies to our job as the church and our job as Christian people. And to get at that, I just tell you a little something. We were together on Thursday night on Facebook Live with my prayer vigil, and we were talking about something I like to call recipe religion. And to get at that, on Thursday night, I had the recipe that was written out, Jill's German chocolate cake, and I had a piece of her German chocolate cake sitting there. And I will tell you that if Jill gave me that recipe and said, make it up, I would be a mess. Because what I would do is I would sit down, I would study the recipe inside and out. I would know it word for word. And then I would go to the store and I would get all the exact ingredients that you need, word for word. And I would get down an eye level with a measuring cup every single one of those ingredients. And then I would follow those instructions to the letter to make sure that it was perfect. And I also know that if I were to do that, the cake wouldn't be right. See, I got so wrapped up in the recipe that I forgot that what I was doing was baking a cake. And it would taste like I forgot what I was doing. Certainly wouldn't taste like that piece of Wonderful I had in front of me that night, that's for sure. And you see, recipe religion, this is so much of what Christianity does. It uses the Bible as a recipe book. And we take and we follow those instructions to the letter with some actually pretty dreadful results. This passage, for instance, is one of them. So Jesus says, if you forgive the sins of any, they're forgiven. If you don't forgive, they're not forgiven. And down through the years, what we've said is, oh, that's ordination. That's how we make pastors. And this is the job of the church. The church has been established to forgive sins and to not forgive sins. Got the recipe? So now the church decides, are you forgiven or are you not forgiven? And if you jump through all the right hoops and you talk to all the right people, then maybe you'll be forgiven. And if you don't jump through all the right hoops as prescribed by all the right people, then maybe you won't be forgiven. And the church decides. They are the dispensers of grace. How do we know that? Well, there's the recipe. John chapter 20. Jesus told us this is our job. And the results are dreadful. We get so hung up on measuring people that we forget that what we're doing is baking a cake. A cake of wonder, a cake of love, a cake of grace. A cake that gives God's forgiveness purely and freely. You know, it's no wonder that when you ask people why they stop coming to church, that the number one reason they give is that they don't feel good enough and they don't feel right enough to be in a place where they're always being measured. This is why I don't buy into recipe religion. See, I think what this passage does, and really what all of the Bible does, in terms of who we are as people, it's really not about prescribing. It's about describing. It's not setting down a list of ingredients so that you can be measured by the list. It's describing who we are. Real people with real struggles, with real demons that very often we cannot overcome. That's what the Bible's doing. It's showing us, it's like it's holding up a mirror and saying, here, you see that? This is who you are. And it's not doing it to judge you or to measure you. It's just simply saying, I love you so much. I want you to see the way you're hurting yourself. I want you to see that you have these very real decisions that you make in life. And they come with very real outcomes. Or to put it another way, in the case, especially in the case of this lesson, forgiveness versus not forgiving. If you forgive, the sins are forgiven. If you don't forgive, the sins aren't forgiven. What happens is, it's really describing what happened with Captain Picard. I called him Pastor Picard. What happens with Captain Picard? See, the passage is looking at us, showing us who we are. Shelley, would you put up the next slide? I want to go back and I want to show you this verse. I want to show you a couple of words in this verse. So the verse is, if you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven. This is the way it was just read. Theo just read it. If you don't forgive, those sins are not forgiven. And so there's the two Greek words up there, and I want to go to the second half of the verse first. So I want to look at the bottom part of that, kratete. I had it right. Kratete. There we go. Kratete. There, I got it. So the word that would be not forgiven. If you do not forgive, those sins are not forgiven. Basically, what it is, if you rule over the sins still rule. If you hold on to them, if you keep control of those sins, the sins are still there, and they are still held, and they still are in control. All right? And so someone has hurt you, and the hurt is painful, and you know it. And probably the last thing in your mind is to say, I'm going to let this go. How can you let it go? The injury is real. The person who has hurt you, they owe you something. There needs to be some kind of justice for all of this. That is our way. And so, you hold on to the sin. You keep control of it. You rule over it. But here's the dirty little secret about holding on to an injury and the person who injures you. That person who injured you, that holding on to it doesn't do a single thing to him. It does absolutely nothing to the person who has injured you. But as you hold on to the sin, that holding on begins to change you, begins to eat away at the core of your being, so that over time it takes up more and more space in your life. I mean, someone has hurt you, And think about the energy it takes to continue to hold on to the hurt, to the injury, in hopes that there would be some kind of justice, or the desire for some kind of justice that eventually turns into an all-consuming passion. Pretty soon, everything that you are, everything that you ever were, has been eaten away by this injury that keeps chipping away at the core of who you are, so that you are no longer Dave or Theo or Al or Shelley. You have become the anger that the injury created. You have become the hurt that the injury did to you. And it is all consuming. So you see, you rule the sin, but over time, the sin, the injury, rules you. And I will tell you that all the retribution and all the vengeance in the world will never satisfy the hole that the injury eats into your heart. It'll never do it. What does Jesus have to say about this? Well, he's describing us, isn't he? This isn't a recipe card. This is describing what happens to us when we are injured. And what he says about this is first half of that same verse. There's only one way out. If you forgive the sins of any, those sins are forgiven. The word is aphiete, and it doesn't just mean forgive. It carries a deeper meaning. Release. Set it free. Let it go. And that is so against everything that we know about an injury. But Jesus, out of love, comes to us. He breathes on us. He says, receive my spirit. And then he says, I no longer want you to hurt yourself. You hold on to those things will hold you. So release them. Let them go. Set them free. Because as you set the injury free, that act of setting free sets you free as well. Let's sing.
Waters, your sovereign hand will be my guide. Where feet may fail and fear surrounds me, you never failed and you won't start now. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. I am yours and you are mine. You are mine.
Okay, so I didn't pick the song, but I'm glad we're singing that song. Thank you very much, both of you, all of you. Deeply appreciated. It just, that song just hit me in terms of what we're talking about here. Because in the Christian faith, we're not talking about measuring people. We're talking about the embrace and love of the Savior. And that is the core and center of everything it is to be a Christian and everything that it is to be a part of the family of Christ. And so, two things occur to me. And I'm going to say this to both people who are in the church and people outside the church. But it's really for both of you, both things. The first thing is really directed towards the people inside the church. We have to stop thinking about ourselves as anything other than cake makers, because that's what we are. And the cake that we are making is the sweet and tender love of Jesus Christ, who, as the song says, is here when the oceans rise over the top of us, and the tides of what it is to be human, and all that sets us apart from God, and all that wants to cover us, those tides are held back by his eternal embrace of love. My friends, we are cake bakers. We are not in the measuring business. Let us never forget that. And for those of you who are not in the church, I want you to begin to see us a little differently. Because we've often come at you as those with great reputation, with great knowledge. We've read all the literature. We know its lessons. We can repeat them at gunpoint, chapter and verse. But that's not who we are. Think of us as Lily, streetwise, just someone who knows life and cares about you so much. We call you by name, and we call you into a living relationship with a God who pulls you out of all of that darkness and all of those ways that the world eats at your soul and consumes you. We're Lily, and we care about you, and we love you, and we want you to be a part of this family, the family that gathers around God's eternal love, his unending forgiveness, freely and wholly given for you. Amen.